The morning sun had only just begun to stretch across the city when something happened that would change the course of one man's life forever. It began on a cracked sidewalk, outside a quiet corporate building, where a tired black janitor named Marcel Vaughn stepped out for his usual 10-minute break. He had no idea that in the next few minutes, a simple act of kindness would ripple into a future he never dared to imagine. He didn't know the woman he was about to help was worth more than the entire block combined. He didn't know the moment he reached into his pocket to hand over a few coins would become the moment that rewrote his destiny. But sometimes, life sends miracles disguised as inconveniences, strangers, and split-second decisions that if you believe kindness creates second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps us keep these powerful stories alive. Marcel's life had not been the kind that offered luxury, praise, or stability. He was in his late 40s, with gentle eyes that carried the exhaustion of years spent sweeping halls no one thanked him for cleaning. Every day he woke up at 4 a.m., took 2 buses to reach the downtown office complex, and scrubbed floors while executives walked past him as if he were invisible. His uniform was clean but faded, and his shoes were starting to give out, but he wore them proudly because they represented something he never wanted to lose again: steady work. Years back, a factory accident had ended his ability to do heavy labor. Jobs vanished. His marriage didn't survive. His savings evaporated. And somewhere along the way, he stopped expecting anything good from life. Yet he never let go of the small, quiet kindness that ran deep in him, the kind of goodness the world rarely rewards but desperately needs. This morning, while the city slowly stirred awake, Marcel leaned against the building's outer wall, sipping from a paper cup of cheap coffee. He scanned the street like he always did, watching buses pass, pigeons flutter, and people rush through their lives. That was when he noticed her. A young woman stood near the bus stop, dressed in simple, understated clothes, an oversized beige sweater, dark jeans, and sneakers that looked worn but still neat. She looked lost in the way people do when the world has suddenly spun a little too fast. Her hair was tied in a low bun, her eyes glossy with frustration, and she clutched an empty wallet in her trembling hands. She checked her phone again and again, pacing anxiously as if the ground itself was falling apart beneath her. Marcel didn't know her name. Didn't know her story. Didn't know that under the plain clothing and tense expression was Ariel Dane, the elusive, media-shy owner of a billion-dollar technology empire. She had purposely slipped out that morning without security, without her driver, without assistants or cameras. She simply wanted a moment alone after an unexpected emergency. Her younger brother had been rushed to the hospital on the other side of the city. She left her mansion in a panic, grabbed the wrong purse, and ended up stranded with no money, no car, and a phone on 3% battery, but Marcel didn't need to know any of that. All he saw was someone in distress. With a sigh that carried more generosity than his wallet realistically allowed, Marcel approached her. He gently asked if she was okay, and she explained, embarrassed but desperate, that she needed to catch a bus but didn't have the fare. Without hesitation, Marcel reached into his pocket. He pulled out the exact amount she needed, the money he had set aside for his own lunch, and pressed it into her palm. He didn't ask for anything in return. Didn't ask why she needed it. Didn't judge. Didn't hesitate. He simply said it was all right, that everyone needs help sometimes, and he hoped her day would get better. Ariel's throat tightened with emotion. No one had shown her such pure, uncalculated kindness in years. Not as a CEO. Not as a business leader. Not as a wealthy woman constantly surrounded by people who wanted something from her. She tried to insist she would repay him, but he shook his head and walked back toward the building before she missed her bus. She stood there, watching him leave, trying to process what had just happened. Then she boarded the bus, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, warmth. The rest of Marcel's day moved on in its usual rhythm. He mopped conference rooms, emptied trash bins, wiped fingerprints off glass doors, and swept under desks where expensive dress shoes would never bother to look. But every so often, he thought about the woman at the bus stop. He didn't regret giving his lunch money away, though his stomach growled through the afternoon. He just hoped she reached wherever she needed to go. That evening, when his shift ended, he shuffled out of the building with the same slow, familiar steps. He didn't notice the sleek black car parked across the street. Didn't notice the woman inside watching him closely. Ariel had returned after seeing her brother safely through his first round of treatment. Her mind kept circling back to the janitor who had saved her that morning. She didn't feel right leaving things unfinished, but she didn't step out to talk to him. Not yet. She wanted to know who he was first, quietly, respectfully. So over the next 3 days, she began visiting the building under the pretense of meeting clients, observing him from a distance. She watched how he worked, carefully, diligently, without complaint. She noticed the way he greeted people even when they ignored him. She saw him help a delivery driver carry boxes that were too heavy. She saw him pick up a spilled coffee that a rush of employees had stepped over. She saw him treat his job, however small it seemed to the world, with pride. By the 4th day, she couldn't stay silent anymore. She approached the building's manager and requested a private meeting. The manager, starstruck and confused, led her to his office, where Ariel revealed who she was and asked about the janitor named Marcel Vaughn. She learned about his accident, his struggle to find work, and the dedication he brought to a job far below his skill level. That night, Ariel drafted a plan. The next morning, Marcel arrived to find something strange, an envelope taped to his locker with his name written in delicate handwriting. He opened it slowly, expecting maybe a notice or a schedule change. But instead, he found a letter, warm, sincere, and life-changing. Ariel explained who she really was. She thanked him for his kindness and told him she had created something for him, a fully funded scholarship to train for a new career, a position waiting for him at her company once he completed it, and a financial gift to support him until he got there. At the bottom, she had written one simple line that made Marcel's vision blur with tears: "You helped me when you had nothing to gain. Now let me help you stand tall again." For the first time in years, Marcel felt his knees weaken, not from exhaustion, but from overwhelming relief. It was as though the world had finally exhaled after holding its breath around him for too long. He sat on a bench outside the locker room, clutching the letter, letting the sunlight warm his face as the miracle sank in. He didn't know how to process this sudden burst of hope. After everything he had lost, kindness had circled its way back to him in a form he never expected. Weeks passed, and the transformation began. Marcel attended training classes sponsored entirely by Ariel's foundation. He studied harder than he ever had in his life, fueled not by fear but gratitude. He discovered he had a natural talent for logistics and operations, skills buried for years under struggle. When he completed the program, Ariel personally welcomed him into her headquarters, where he was offered a position that paid more than he had ever made. The staff adored him within days. He was respected, valued, and finally seen. Months later, on a bright, peaceful afternoon, Marcel stood in his new office, a modest but beautiful space overlooking the city. He looked out the window, remembering the sidewalk where everything had changed. Remembering the moment he gave away his lunch money. Remembering the woman who turned out not to be a stranger, but a blessing. That he learned then that kindness is never wasted. It simply waits for the right moment to return home.